There's some things in my last video that I want to discuss a little bit more, because there's some things that when I was reading last night that I came across that were things that I really suspected all along, which is that empiricism is kind of, I guess, a part of the Aristotelian philosophy. And the Aristotelian philosophy, as I explained, was sort of an undercurrent or sort of an implicit message that you see in the book Crime and Punishment, when Raskolnikov suggests that the ends justify the means, that some people are born to utter a new word, to create a new revolution, and totally kind of destroy the old ways and create new ones. And how that was very similar. I explained how that was very similar to the Aristotelian philosophy, that that certain people are born to be slaves, other people are naturally born to rule. That nature has sort of created this hierarchy, right? Okay, so when I was reading last night, indeed, empiricism, which is the idea that things can only be evaluated through this sort of sensory and physical method or apparatus, right? That nothing actually, I guess, nothing actually numinous exists. That if you do experience, if a human being does experience anything numinous, according to this theory, it's just neurons that are firing off in your brain, or chemicals being dumped into your body telling you that you're experiencing it, but you're not really. And it makes perfect sense logically how this would tie into the entire school of thought that believes that some people are naturally born to be slaves or others are meant to rule, right? It goes on this almost like this sort of sociopathic laws of the jungle kind of philosophy. And I want to also elaborate a little bit more on the movie I was discussing in the last video called Oh Lucky Malcolm, which, as I explained, is the protagonist is played by not Oh Lucky Malcolm, I'm sorry, Oh Lucky Man. Malcolm McDowell is the name of the actor who plays the protagonist in this movie. And he's this innocent, idealistic, naive kind of character who eventually is abducted by the military and witnesses all these really corrupt, these really strange, perverted experiments that are going on in this institution. One of which is this a young man who his head has been transplanted onto a cow, I think it is. I haven't seen the scene in a long time, but that I remember watching scenes in this movie. Really horrific movie. It's a brilliant movie though, and Malcolm McDowell's character is just goes deeper and deeper into hell, basically. Just witnesses just the weirdest stuff. It's like, I mean, I really recommend this movie, but my point really in bringing this up is that that the combination of empiricism and then the Aristotelian philosophy has sort of created this kind of world, this sort of meaningless and kind of chaotic world that you would imagine Rodion Raskolnikov, the protagonist in Crime and Punishment, you'd imagine that being his wet dream, that being his ideal, what he ideally would want for everybody. I think that you often hear these two different phrases, and they're often at odds with each other. There's often a rift between these two different philosophies. One is seeing is believing, and one is believing is seeing. And obviously seeing is believing is the empiricist point of view, and then believing is seeing is merely relying on faith as a substitute, or faith necessarily being seen as an expression of knowledge in some illogical, warped way that I don't really quite understand. And both extremes, both those two ends of the spectrum, of course, I don't really believe in. But you can see how this rift was artificially constructed to basically create that war between religion and science. and that sort of the empiricist scientific community treating people like cattle in these really kind of perverted and bizarre ways that you see in the movie A Lucky Man. And however, Mushkin, the protagonist in Dostoevsky's book The Idiot, doesn't really seem to subscribe to either side of the spectrum. He doesn't necessarily, he's not advocating that people, that seeing is believing or believing is seeing, right? He's very much off the charts. His kind of intelligence does not really fit into society, because he essentially hasn't really, as I explained in the last video, has not really been perverted by it. And therefore his mind is clearer, his mind is sharper, even though socially he might be inept. But I think the most important thing to take away, I think, from these three stories is that, I guess, that kind of psychological characteristic, or that personality that will tend to be derided as being too idealistic, right? When in reality, it might simply be perceiving things or seeing things that the people in positions of power think are too threatening against their own agenda. And so I think you can see a little bit of this in Mushkin and the protagonist in A Lucky Man.